Hey, so it's Colin here from OpenROV, and I'm here today to show you how to assemble and glue the internal structure for OpenROV version 2.4. So first off, as you can see, we have all the acrylic parts for internal structure, as well as some acrylic glue, or acrylic cement, I should say. So first off, we're going to have to fill up our bottle of acrylic cement. So this stuff's not really like glue in the traditional sense. It's very watery. It's almost, yeah, it's pretty much like, I think it's an acetone base. Essentially, it's a solvent time bonding agent. It melts the plastic together, so you actually, when the joint forms, it's actual plastic on plastic. Versus a heavy adhesive between the plastics. So we like using these syringe type bottles because it lets us more precisely kind of feed the cement into the places and cracks we'd like them to. So just take your cement, take the bottle, squeeze out the air, kind of, and this is how we fill our bottles. Once you've kind of squeezed out the air sufficiently, kind of like stick it into the cement to kind of siphon it into the bottle. So as you can also see, I have a paper towel on the bottom as well. So if you don't want your parts, sometimes there might be a little bit of excess cement, and if it drips, it'll actually, if a part settling, it actually might stick the part to the table. So I have that there, as well as for also kind of removing any excess cement that might be around. So first off, so that should be sufficient. Okay, so first off, I'm going to show you, I'm just going to go step by step, I'm going to show you how to glue the handle together for the ROV. So these are the 4 pieces you need for that. As well, as you can see, sometimes you get, like, from this piece, if you can tell, there's like little brown bits. So where the laser cutter cuts it, there might be a little bit of kind of like the surface gunk that kind of accrues onto the material. So in that case, if you want to, it's not necessary, but I like to keep it clean so that way you get a nice edge. And you don't need to get any gunk in the joint as well. So you take a bit of IPA, spray on some paper towel, and then just kind of take that. And that stuff wipes really easily off. Just go off with a passive IPA, and there it goes. Just disappears right off to make sure it's nice and clean. Cool. So step 1, take 2 of these pieces, kind of like put them over each other, like kind of at an angle, so you can kind of feed the acrylic cement in the crack between them. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to enjoy. So you can see it kind of like siphons, it really easily siphons through. It gets sucked right through the cracks because it's pretty much like it's like almost a water solvent. So it fuses pretty quickly. So quickly kind of get it back into place. So don't worry about getting on your hands because like it's not too much, at least. It's kind of like a acetone of some sort. It's essentially just a solvent, so it doesn't really stick to your fingers at all. The plastic will once it melts, so you want to be careful of that. So once it's nice and aligned, now it's definitely a single solid piece pretty much now. Do the same for the third piece. Kind of hold it off at an angle. Kind of apply the cement. As you can see, like when you apply the cement, the plastic behind kind of turns a little bit more opaque. So that's kind of indicative of you can see it just kind of shows you visually how much of the cement has been siphoned through. So let's do that. And also, I also like to kind of go along the edges in places like at structural corners and just kind of reinforce it a little bit, dab more glue, and let that kind of feed through the cracks, so you get a really nice solid joint between the two. So there you go. Here's that piece. And the next step is to take this piece, kind of slide it down, have it fit it. So, and then kind of, again, do the same thing. Take the acrylic cement, feed it into the joints, feed it into the joints, feed it into the joints, and kind of make sure you get both sides of the joint, both sides right here. And same thing with this as well. You want to make sure both edges of the legs kind of glue in with that. So just kind of let it settle in, and let's give it some time to set. And this should be it. So that's the handle. Another great thing to do is that because you'll be carrying the ROV a lot by this handle here, these corners, because they're just laser cut, they're a little sharp. So what you can do after the fact is take some sandpaper or file and file like a nice little fillet on that. So when you're grabbing it and you're carrying the ROV, it doesn't cut into your fingers. Cool. So the handle's done. The next step would be to make the internal structure that supports the thrusters. So now for this part, you would like these pieces, all brackets, as well as the lateral thrusters and the vertical thruster mount. So to assemble this, you take first kind of, I like to first kind of just put together to make sure that everything is in the right direction orientation. So you put that's for the vertical thruster. Put that there, and then make sure if you see this top notch, you want that to join with that. So you have these 3 notches that align right there. So this is a little bit trickier, but what I like doing is, again, feed this into you want to feed the acrylic cement into the cracks. So like right there. Feed it to the cracks. Again, you don't want too much, you don't want too little. Definitely don't want too little. But it's okay if it comes, if a bit too much spills out a little, because this dries right up anyways. So, dripping down. So you can definitely feel them siphoning through the cracks. And it becomes pretty, you can kind of, just playing with it, it gets solid pretty quickly. So I just want to make sure you hit all the joints right there. And make sure that everything's nice and butted up against each other. Everything's nice and tight. Should be right there. And then yeah, it's easier to kind of feed the cement along the cracks of where, like, internal cracks, so it doesn't like leak out. It's kind of hard to do it on this side. It's easier to do it on the inside. And that should be good. So as long as you've hit all the major fusion points, and then you should just let it set. So again, let's take this piece. Well, now let's kind of put this back plate on. So again, make sure align the holes, right? In this case, it's just like that. It just pops right in. And let's do it from this side and run along and feed acrylic cement right there. Oops, come lifting up. Yes, make hold down and push down and make sure that it gets a nice fused joint. That as well. Just kind of hold, squeeze. You can really, when you squeeze down, you can kind of see it kind of bead out at the corners, and that'll show you that you definitely have enough cement. Again, remember the excess cement just evaporates off anyways, so because it's just a solvent. But just make sure you get a healthy amount on it. See this last edge right here? You can really, yeah, it's really cool. You can't really see from the camera as well, but when you're doing it, you can definitely see visually like the cement being like a suction, like through a capillary action, can get sucked along the entire edge. So make sure you definitely see that capillary action happen along each of the edges to make sure you get not a joint just a single place, but along each of all the edges. So pretty much like what you end up having is a structure that is fully glued together. So rather than it being separate pieces, what the cement does more or less is actually fuse the entire structure together. So you get this nice, really solid acrylic piece. Cool. So with that in place, you take this long strip, and this goes right here. So again, it's kind of awkward once you have it in there, but if you like kind of leave it poking out just a little bit, just a hair like that, and then just run the acrylic cement. Oop, there we go. Let me get that end. Just run this acrylic cement along that edge. Let it siphon in. And then kind of like wiggle it back and forth. You can really feel it, like once the cement's in there, it kind of smooths out. And then you can feel it get a little melty, and push it in. Make sure everything's aligned up nicely. Kind of get the end there, the end there. And then push that down, and then there you go. And then just for good measure, of course, you want to fuse all the additional joints that weren't hit by that. Cool. There you go. So now you have this structure. Cool. So now we take this actual top plate. Let's put the handle in. So first, make sure to test fit, make sure that it fits in. There we go, it just drops right in beautifully. So, of course, there's a bit of surface area there, so it might be a good thing to not only hit it from this side, but also kind of hit it from the top side to make sure that it siphons through all those cracks and nooks. Let's do that right there. So just run it along. So yeah, once you get used to this, it's pretty easy. Because unlike having like a typical adhesive where you have to run along all the surfaces, like this pretty much, oops, there you go. So again, sometimes it doesn't fuse right away, so that's a good point. You have to kind of hold it in for a little bit, and then once it starts evaporating and again, as a solvent, once it starts melting the plastic, will it actually hold? So let's do this edge again to make sure that got all that. Cool. So that should be doing. Yeah, and also this. Remember, this internal structure is not on the outside cover, so it doesn't have to be perfectly clean. If you want to make it nice and perfect, you can kind of mask the places off to make sure that there's not any extra solvent on it to make a nice surface finish. But because you're not going to be able to see this anyways, it's not terribly important. So yeah, that should be nice and in. And then let's put this structure in as well. So again, always make sure everything fits. And you're not forgetting anything. Make sure it fits, then glue. So again, remember to make sure you want to, again, for every single place where it touches, you want to be able to feed the cement in. So just remember to feed it along all the edges. You don't have to necessarily do both sides if you provide enough cement, but it doesn't hurt either. So again, remember you can always see that kind of capillary action take place. So just like kind of press down on that as I'm feeding. Cool. And then let's get these corners as well, where they meet. Definitely want that joint there to fuse nicely. And because this is solvent, if you actually blow on it, it will dry faster. Well, the excess stuff will, so yeah. So for, yep. Just make sure you push down nicely and tightly on that, and yeah, now you have it. Cool. Now, just the finishing touches on this internal structure piece. So take this, so you have 4 of these, right, in total. So same thing again, you want to first glue them together. So offset them slightly, right, offset them slightly, feed that glue in. Oh, I love how it sucks right in. Oh yeah, capillary action. Okay, and then slide it around a little to make sure that kind of gets over the whole entire surface, and then just kind of clinch down on it to make sure that really, really smacks up against you nice and tight. There we go. And then of course, again, run around the edges or the outer edges where you don't want any fissures on the edges, because that's how failures propagate if you have cracks. So you want to make sure you get a nice along the edges as well. Corners are always good. Just add a little bit, and you'll see it gets sucked in there. There we go. Cool, and that one should be good. Let's do the same for this piece. So this piece actually, as you see the curves, those kind of, that cradles the electronics tube nicely. So there we go. So again, just kind of squeeze it around, mess it around, and then just kind of line them up nicely, and then clamp down on that. And then hit the edges just for good measure. Cool. Nice. So with those two glued, just take this. So these kind of just fit in this way. Again, make sure you fit everything before you glue it, obviously. So these slip in nicely, so let's just pop those in really quick. Let's do this side, do one side at a time. Just kind of pops right in, might flex a little. And then again, run that cement along the edge. Nice, make sure the siphon's in. Again, it's always easier to run it along the inside edge versus the outside edge, so there you go. Make sure, there you go. Make sure that's nice and snug. Again, you want to make sure that sometimes this corner might get dug in, so make sure that this stays flush along the edge. So when you're gluing it, make sure it stays flush. Make that's flush, nice and flush, cool. Add a little bit more cement on this side, and we should be good. Okay, and do the same thing for this side. Just snap that in. There we go. And let's run that cement. Again, now let's push down on that so it gets a nice little bond against both edges. There we go. And yep, and there you have it. So there's the internal structure for your OpenROV. So make sure you have, yep, so this is what it should look like. And I'll see you again next video. Woo! Yeah.